The steam from the mug is hitting your chin. It's a little too hot to drink, but you're holding onto it anyway because it gives your hands something to do. Across the kitchen island, your partner is asking you a question. It's a fair one. Maybe it's about the dishes, or maybe it's about that thing you said last night that came out wrong. They've asked it twice now. The second time their voice had that sharp, jagged edge, the one that tells you they're losing patience. You had a sentence ready 10 seconds ago. You knew exactly what to say. But as the silence in the room stretches out, you feel that sentence start to dissolve. It's like trying to hold a handful of dry sand. The harder you try to grab the words, the faster they leak through your fingers. You can feel them waiting for an answer. You can feel the pressure of their gaze. And yet, the harder you try to force the air out of your lungs, the tighter your throat feels. It's like a physical barricade has been slammed down behind your teeth. This isn't you being difficult. You aren't giving them the silent treatment. That's the version of the story they see from the outside, a wall of cold indifference. On your side of the wall, you can feel 5 different responses forming at once. The one that explains, one that defends, one that apologizes for things you don't actually need to apologize for. One that brings up what they did 3 weeks ago, and the one that just says you're right and ends it. Every one of them is partially formed and instantly dissolving. By the time you reach for any of them, they're gone. The silence only shows up when the stakes are high. You don't go silent with the cashier who gets your order wrong. You go silent with your partner, your parents, or the friend you're terrified of losing. Look, if you didn't care, you'd just walk away, or you'd snap back. The other person sees a face that is not moving. You are managing 5 conversations at once. Most people assume that if you're quiet during a fight, you've checked out. They think you don't care enough to engage, but for a lot of us, it's actually the opposite. The silence is a specific kind of paralysis that happens when your brain decides that saying the wrong thing is a much bigger disaster than saying nothing at all. Here is the weird biological reality of what's happening in your neck and chest. You've probably heard of fight or flight, right? It's the standard survival kit we all have. But there's a third setting that's just as common, even if it's harder to spot: the freeze. Back in the 1990s, a researcher named Porges started talking about something called polyvagal theory. Basically, Porges found that our nervous system doesn't just have an on and off switch for stress. It has a whole hierarchy. When we feel safe, we're in social engagement mode. We're chatty, we're relaxed, we're ourselves. When we feel a little threatened, we mobilize into fight or flight. We get loud or we leave. But if the threat feels too big, if our brain decides that we can't win the fight and we can't run away, it hits the emergency brake. This is the freeze response. It's a physiological downshift. Your heart rate actually changes, and the muscles in your throat can literally constrict. It's an old, ancient piece of software. It's the same thing a deer does in the headlights. The deer isn't being rude to the car. Its body has just decided that staying perfectly still is the only way to survive. For you, the car is the person you love being upset with you. To your nervous system, that feels like a life or death situation. It's not logical, but your body isn't trying to be logical. It's trying to keep you from getting eaten. It's also worth mentioning that this response usually has a history. If you grew up in a house where speaking up was met with a louder reaction, where being articulate was treated like a weapon or a reason for punishment, your brain took notes. It built a map that says, words lead to pain, silence leads to safety. Maybe it was a parent who got louder when you tried to explain yourself, or a sibling who would twist your words and use them against you later. It could be just a household where the unspoken rule was that articulate kids were talking back and quiet kids were good. You didn't choose the silence as a strategy, but you learned gradually that it was the option with the lowest cost. And here's the thing, that strategy worked. It got you through. Your nervous system isn't running this program because it's broken. It's running it because at one point it kept you safe. The fact that it's still running it now, in a kitchen with a partner who actually wants to hear you, isn't evidence of failure. It's evidence that the strategy was effective enough to become permanent. The problem is, you're not in that house anymore, but the map hasn't been updated. You're following the old directions to a basement that doesn't exist anymore. The kitchen is. When the freeze hits, it feels like a failure. You feel like a broken communicator. You watch the other person get more frustrated, and you hate yourself for not being able to just say the words. But I want you to look at that silence differently for a second. The silence isn't a vacuum, it's a containment strategy. You're carrying so much internal noise, so much fear, so much care, so much desire to fix things that your system has simply overloaded. It isn't the sound of you checking out, it's the sound of you refusing to use a weapon you know would work too well. I'm going to say that one more time because it's the most important thing in this whole video. Because most of your life, you've probably interpreted the silence as evidence that you're bad at communication, that you're emotionally limited, and you can't handle conflict like other people can. None of that is the actual story. The actual story is that you have so much to say, and you've learned that saying it could cost you the relationship. So you don't. You are protecting the relationship with the only tool your body thinks is safe. It's a clumsy, heavy, frustrating tool, but it comes from a place of deep protective instinct. You aren't detached, you're just holding your breath so you don't break the room. So, what do you do when the words are stuck behind that wall? Honestly, you don't have to break the wall down with a sledgehammer. You don't have to apologize for your biology. Maybe the next time it happens, not in the heat of it, but later when the air is clear, you show them this, or you tell them, "Sometimes my voice goes offline when I'm overwhelmed. It doesn't mean I'm gone. It just means I'm waiting for the all-clear signal." You might find that once the other person understands it's a freeze and not a wall, the pressure starts to lift. And when the pressure lifts, the words usually find their way back home. You don't have to fix your entire history tonight. Just noticing the freeze is enough for now. 3 hours later, you're brushing your teeth, driving home, or you're standing in front of the open refrigerator without remembering why you opened it. And the sentence arrives, the one you needed at the kitchen counter, fully formed, calm, articulate, the exact thing you wanted to say, showing up now that nobody is asking for it. That's not a failure to have said it earlier. That's the freeze releasing on its own schedule. Your body decided it was finally safe enough to let the words through. The conversation didn't end when you went silent. It just paused and then continued, alone, in a different room, hours later. It's okay to be quiet while you find your way back.